The biggest misconception is people see someone's first film and they think that's what they did on their first day as a filmmaker. So when people were treating me like when I did Slacker, like I just picked up a camera 5 minutes before, I always was really insistent on telling them, no, I've been doing this for a long time, actually. I did a Super 8 feature before this. I've done, I have a closet full of shorts. I've been at this, years and years at this point.
Welcome back to the channel. In this week's clip, we're going to be looking at Richard Linklater. Great clip that I found in the audio commentary of his movie, You Cannot Learn to Plow by Reading Books. I think that's what it's called. And great stuff in that audio commentary of a movie that I'm sure there'd probably be under 10,000 people that have even seen this. This is the Super 8 feature that he did before he made the movie that got him famous called Slacker. And on that DVD audio commentary, there's some fantastic stories of the struggles that every young filmmaker goes through to actually become proficient enough to not suck. So he has some great insight here. He's the filmmaker that's often held up as the proof that it can be done, because he's a guy who just set out to do it, and after decades of work, he actually went from basically making this Super 8 feature film to an Academy Award nominated director. And I've always loved his work, and I think it's a real treasure to have this insight that is found on this audio commentary of his very first feature film, which I'm sure no one has seen. So let's watch the clip.
I have a lot of sympathy for filmmakers making their first films because it's so much work to pull it together. You're kind of finding out what you don't know, which is endless. It's hard to be a leader. It's hard to communicate with people. I cut so much of that out of my dialogue altogether. Like, okay, I can't communicate with anyone about my own ideas, so I'm going to just do this film alone. I don't want to even deal with anybody. I don't want to explain anything to anyone. I don't know how to even talk to anyone about what I'm thinking. So I'm just going to do this alone and see what happens. So I thought, okay, well, that's challenge number one. I'll do every technical element of this movie. I'll shoot it, light it where necessary. I'd like to not light too much. I'll, obviously edit it. I'll do the soundtrack. I'll do everything. I'll do, whatever sound work, everything about it. So that was a nice little crash course in filmmaking. Just that all these years later, I consider and go, well, yeah, I can, I can do all these things. I really can. I can record sound. I can, it's not my forte. It's not what I enjoy doing, but I can do, having done it a lot, everything, that you kind of go into something confident. You know what everybody you're working with is up against. It was a nice technical challenge for myself, and also it was kind of fun going through life thinking, okay, I'm working on something bigger. How, and to be engaged in a work, in an ongoing process. And I shot this primarily over about a 1-year period. This movie, It's Impossible to Learn to Plow by Reading Books, I would consider in my own world like my graduate thesis. I had made all these undergraduate films just on my own. They're not even experiments. I call them technical experiments. I'd do a whole film just for editing, or a whole film just for lighting or camera movement. I'd get a friend to push me in a dolly, or, I was just, trying to, just learn all the elements of filmmaking. They were just technical exercises. I was amazed looking back how much patience I had to not crave immediate results. I knew they wouldn't be forthcoming. I knew enough about the history of film and studying filmmakers' lives that it wasn't something that just came overnight. There's not really prodigy filmmakers in the way there are in music and other art disciplines. It's kind of so all-encompassing. But I'm thankful for my background now that I wasn't a guy at 9 years old who knew he wanted to make films and was filming blowing up his train set, and I never came at it from that. I came at it more literature, philosophy, theater was kind of my background before I discovered cinema. So I was always kind of coming at it from more of a theoretical standpoint. I'm really sketchy on my own education. It's all just been my own reading. And so I don't feel like I'm kind of splotchy when it comes to the academia. But, it's been my own subjective path, that has its own merits too. Whatever gaps it leaves you, at least your own learning has been yours. It's been, this is what I was interested in. Here's a filmmaker I really liked, and here's who he liked, and they taught me this, and I went from there to there, and here's a writer I liked who, so, you're on your own subjective learning path. There's no overnight success. There's no idiot savant filmmakers. There's no, it's not going to work like that. It's a lot of work, and people don't want to hear that. They want to think, oh, you just did it. Wow. No one wants to think how they would have to alter their life, because by the time, say, Slacker came out, I could honestly say I've put in more time in the last 9 years or whatever into cinema than anyone could, 20 hours, 18 hours a day. My whole life, every day for all those years was 100% devoted to cinema. In some way, it's kind of insulting when you're sort of treated, every actor, everybody who's ever gotten to some level, you're treated like the overnight success, but you in your heart know that's not the case.
So much great stuff in that clip. All energy law. No one wants to think about how they're going to have to change their life. And what I love about this clip, even though he's relating it to filmmaking, what he's actually talking about is entrepreneurship in general. When you want to do your own thing, you are responsible to do everything, potentially, because people think they're going to start a business and they're going to have some employees to help them do things. But the truth is that until the business grows to a point where it can actually sustain and generate the income that you can justify the salaries of another person, as an entrepreneur in pretty much any field, you are going to be solely responsible for every aspect of the endeavor, which is what he's talking about here. For his first film, he literally did it all. And he forced himself to do it all. And as a result, he had that knowledge that has helped him throughout the rest of his career, because whenever he was in another situation, he knew what the other people in the crew were required to do, because he had an understanding of what each of those tasks were. That's entrepreneurship 101. I love there's no overnight success. So here's a guy who spent all of his time, like he says, 20 hours a day for as long as he could remember, just studying and doing technical exercises to learn how to do all these things properly. People don't just set out and one day magically do these things. Even what I'm doing here, I have a pretty extensive background in media myself, so it's one thing to have the knowledge that I have. It's another thing to have the technical ability to actually set up all these lights and these cameras and to be able to edit it into something that's not completely shitty. But that takes a lot of time, and like he says, I'm surprised at how patient I was to be able to do all these things, because that is one of the things that if you are going to become entrepreneurial, you will absolutely have to learn patience, because there is no overnight success. What he's describing here is actually the first two phases of our energy law model. So he has this massive resistance he wants to overcome, which is basically creating his first feature film on Super 8. But he's not ready to take on the responsibility of working with too many people. So as a result of that, his potential in all these other areas is going to have to increase, because if resistance is constant and current increases, potential difference must increase. So the resistances that he is overcoming are the setting up of the camera, the setting up of the sound, the shooting of the video, the being in the video, taking all of that and editing it into something that's engaging enough to be worth watching. But he's compounded it because, as he says, this took him over a year to do. So now it becomes a total endurance run. So you move to the action constant reality, and if current is constant and resistance increases, potential difference must increase. So now he's got the responsibility, because he's chosen to take this venture on himself of going to all these different locations, setting up the camera, being in the shot, doing the managing of the crowds, which he talks about in this too. All of this single-handedly by himself, with the occasional observer that happens to be wandering by that asks him what he's doing and gives him a little hand on that day. All of this leads to the establishing of all of these different potentials in all of these different areas that allow him to basically 20 years later create something that gets him an Academy Award nomination, which is the movie Boyhood. Fantastic film. So this is years and years and years, and like he says, no one wants to think about how their lifestyle must change when they set out to do these things. Everything is easy in your mind until you actually encounter the first resistance and the second resistance. And like he says, the things you don't know when you go into a venture are endless. And I'm discovering that too with what I'm doing with this whole thing that I'm putting together. I'm on the exact same journey as you. In whatever you're doing, I am experiencing through the process of doing this. This is not magically happening. This is me having to constantly focus my energy to overcome all the resistances that present themselves so that this will hopefully turn into a potential that is worthy of growing and spreading with the knowledge throughout the world. That's my goal. I even love the title of the very first movie he did. You cannot learn to plow by reading books. It's amazing. Even the title is energy law. You cannot learn to plow through theory. You have to take the action of actually start plowing. If you do not start plowing physically, you will never be able to master plowing. Even in the title, he's got energy law ingrained in the very, very first project that he did, whether he knew it or not. It's just an amazing clip, and he's an amazing filmmaker who's done some really, really incredible work. I would love to talk to him someday because his movie, particularly Waking Life, is one of the most incredible philosophical films you'll ever see. If you've never seen it, you should absolutely watch the movie Waking Life by Richard Linklater. Thanks for watching. If you just stumbled onto this little clip here, be sure to like and subscribe. Every week we post a new analysis of a clip that I found online where someone is explaining something that I can relate energy law to. They just don't realize that what they're observing is energy law itself. And I think that as you watch more and more of these clips, you will slowly start seeing how this pattern, which we call the first principle, is impacting every aspect of your life.